questions, because most of it is questions. We don't have any inquest, inquiry, ballistics, forensics, there's no autopsy or death cert for Michael Collins. Isn't that one of the strangest things in the world? Nothing for Michael Collins. There's not a single bullet from Béal na Bláth. We have the bullet that killed Harry Boland in a hotel in Skerries, but not one bullet from Béal na Bláth. It's like it never happened. I got an email, bizarrely, about a year and a half ago from a guy who said, my grandfather was in that convoy, and he said there was no ambush. So what the hell happened? Anyway, Twitter's one of those fun places where you can have people ruin and waste your time for the rest of your life. But when I got back to these, one of them, an editor for the Indo for 30 years, said, I don't want to go down those rabbit holes. I don't want to go down those rabbit holes. Imagine a journalist saying, I don't want to go down rabbit holes. The job of a journalist is to go down the rabbit hole, interview all the rabbits, and find out the extent of the worry. Am I not wrong? The journalist's job is not to protect power, and not to not ask questions. It's to ask every question going, and find out the truth. We seem to have lost that connection back to thinking, ladies and gentlemen. It reminds me of Humbert Wolff, a man named after two great Irish patriots. His great poem, you cannot hope to bribe or twist, thank God, the British journalist, but see what the man will do unbribed. There's no occasion to. And so, folks, what we have today is a kind of what I call a mantelpiece martyr, Michael Collins. Nothing to do with the real man at all. A great man, probably the greatest Irishman, who, yes, was complex and different, and had military plans, and many people say, oh God, if they'd actually invaded the north in 1922, that would have been terrible. Well, what do? We just kicked the so-called bloodbath down the road for decades and decades and decades and decades. Maybe his solution was the right solution. We'll never know. And instead of that, we have a sanitized Michael Collins, we have a movie Michael Collins, we have Michael Collins the Peacemaker. We can put him over our mantelpiece with John Paul II and JFK and Jesus getting open heart surgery. And this book that came out last year, Michael Collins, The People's Peacemaker. And yes, he was a peacemaker, but he realized there was going to have to be a little bit more war before there was the ultimate peace. And it's the strange massaging of his character, which I find very strange. And it's weird because people have critiqued me about doing the show and asking these questions and, you know, don't talk about it. I get phone calls from people saying, oh, Paddy, would you let it lie? Leave the poor man alone. And I just want to exhume Michael Collins, find out what really happened to him so we can answer that question. And we can actually do what some of Collins' relatives said to me, who are lovely people, who really were great people for trying to unite Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. It worked, Collins' family, by the way, just so you know. And, but they're lovely people. And they'd come along and said, but Paddy, why are you obsessed with the death? And I said, because it's an unsolved mystery. You can't let one of the greatest Irishmen die and then not try and find out what really happened to him. It's a stain on the state. It's a terrible shame. And because they were saying, well, why, remember the fun things about Michael Collins. He was very funny. He was extremely funny, folks. At one cabinet meeting, W.T. Cosgrave was fast asleep. And Collins went up and whacked him on the head and said, go back to sleep for all the good you're doing. When you look around today. Sleeping through a housing debate, folks. Sleeping through a housing debate. In a nice big comfy chair during COVID. I know, they are very comfy chairs, to be honest. To be honest. And of course, many of Collins, another detraction of Collins is that he had no ideas and he was just basically a soldier and that was it. I mean, one minute he's a desk jockey and the next minute he's a soldier. You know, we're never quite sure. But he did put many of these great ideas down, especially when he was selling the Dáil bonds. And the Dáil bonds have pretty much a very good encapsulation of Collins' actual ethos about Ireland. Now, recover Ireland for the Irish. What he's not saying is just Ireland for the Irish alone and dump everybody else out. Remember that Michael Collins was an unvetted male who went to London for 10 years. Unvetted immigrant. But what he's saying is we have to restore Ireland to its language and all the rest of those things, all those battles that were fought by the Gaelic League back in the day. Re-people the land. Fair enough. Everything is very Dublin-centric in Ireland today, isn't it? Harness the rivers. I live in Galway at the moment. There was 26 water wheels in Galway. If the Green Party were effective in any way, they would reinstate those 26 water wheels, make electricity that would really take care of most of Galway City. That's an actual solution green idea. But when I put it on Facebook, someone got back and said, "What about the salmon?" And I said, "I'll eat them." Plant the hillsides and the wastes. Very, very good idea. Set the looms spinning. Abolish the slums. Paramount in Colin's mind was abolishing the slums. And, to be fair, later governments did attempt to do that and did a pretty okay job of it. Just not lately, folks. Not lately. They've stopped building. Send her ships to every port. We still don't have a commercial navy on an island nation since 1984. Can you believe that? We have no merchant navy. Set the hammer ringing on the anvil. Industrialisation. Garner the harvest of the seas. Drain the bogs. Save the boys and girls for Ireland. What did he mean by this? Stop emigration. Have we stopped emigration? No. You can restore Ireland's health, her strength, her beauty, and her wealth. This was Colin's very simple idea. And he crowdfunded a revolution with these Dáil bonds to do so. And I think we owe it to him to find out what happened to him. And to continue his vision. Remember, I'm from an anti-treaty family. I'm from a Fianna Fáil background. I'm from a long-time hater of the Anglo-Irish Treaty. But the more I learned about Collins, the more I learned about his real plans, the more I realised that I was a practical, pragmatic person who just wanted to get thus far and then go on the next step. And the fact that we don't want to find out anything about him, and we spend our time besmirching him, and all the rest of it. It's like when people besmirch anybody in this country because they have ideas that people don't like. And it's not that I agree with those ideas, but I agree with everybody being able to state their case and talk honestly and be argued down honestly. But this thing of just ignoring people and just saying, no, they're not even to be counted or included, it's wrong. Because conversation and actual discussion and solutions die in darkness. And it's the same as Michael Collins' death. His death has died in darkness until I started kicking the bucket 2 years ago. And boy, have I received some abuse and hatred for doing so. But I've received more love and support, because what everybody realises is that if we find out what really happened to Michael Collins, then we can start growing up as a nation. We didn't want to talk about what the church were doing. Well, wasn't Sinead O'Connor right 40 years ago? She received a lot of hassle for that too. But it turned out she was a prophet in her own land. And the way we don't want to talk about things basically leads me to this one conclusion. We need to talk about it. We need to talk more. We need more sunlight and more transparency about all of this stuff. The death of Michael Collins is the great shame of this nation, but the greater shame is to not find out what exactly happened. Not just for his case, because he deserves to know, but for Sonny O'Neill and Emmett Dalton and all the people whose names have been besmirched in the process as well. And there's a reason why the state doesn't want to look into it. Two Taoiseach turned around and say we'll never reopen the case of Michael Collins. The reason is, because if we find out that Collins was killed by the British state with the collusion of a collaborationist government, well then it puts the very foundation of the state in doubt. It delegitimizes the state. To kill your young leader 8 months into his leadership. I don't think if that happened in Turkey, to Ataturk, the Turks would have said, Asher, no, don't talk about it, Asher, we'll never know. I don't think if it happened to Tito in Yugoslavia, they would have ignored it. But somehow in Ireland, Michael Collins gets killed, and we say, we're never going to find out what happened. And we'll just let rumours and hearsay take the place of real investigation and reality. And we won't grow up as a nation until we start dealing with things as adults, including, why don't we have a metro to Dublin Airport? That would drive Michael Collins mad. Well, he'd say Cork Airport, but you know what I mean. Everyone's a little bit for their own place. But essentially, folks, the great shame of our nation is not dealing with this and not talking to ourselves honestly about ourselves and not dealing with the reality of the country. And hopefully, as time moves on, and as more and more people find out more and decide that they're not conspiracy theorists, they're actually conspiracy analysts, we can all finally grow up as a nation too, and hopefully lead the way to that new maturity that leads us to the state we've always meant to be. Thank you very much.